Hello, and welcome to episode 75 of the Woman of Faith in Leadership podcast. And today I'm doing a follow up episode on episode 73, where I share 10 signs of a toxic workplace culture. And in today's episode, I'll be sharing 8 ways how you can fix a toxic workplace culture. And stay tuned because at the end of the episode, I'll be answering a listener question, which is a follow-up question from episode 72, where I talked about one-on-one meetings. So stay tuned. Leading as a woman is tough, but leading as a woman of faith is next level. However, it doesn't have to be that way. God has called you into this leadership role because He says you are worthy. You are His child, and if He qualifies you, who in this world can unqualify you? You might suffer from imposter syndrome and believe you're not good enough, but God says you are good enough. Hi, I'm Rika, Whelan, Christian leader and workplace culture coach, and together we're going to navigate leadership with faith as our foundation. Let's get started. Grab your coffee or water, keep that notebook and pen handy, and let's jumpstart your leadership. Now, when it comes to a toxic workplace culture, how do we actually know if it is a toxic workplace culture or if it's just the norm? Well, go and listen to episode 73 where I addressed that question in particular. Because yes, each workplace does have their own little quirks because of individuals. But go and listen at those 10 things that I shared that should really be red flags for you in terms of your workplace culture. Now, when you want to fix this workplace culture, just remember that it's not going to be a quick fix. Whatever I'm offering you today will definitely not be a quick fix because workplace culture is 100% attached to human behavior. And to improve workplace culture, we need to change human behavior. Okay, and as human beings, it can take for us a very long time to change our behavior. Even if you think about new habits, the rule of thumb is if you want to create a new habit, you have to do it for 21 days consistently for it to be a new habit. So before I even start sharing these things, I want to say to you that be patient because this will be a long process, but it will be so worth it. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to recognize the actual problems that you're having, okay? So go and listen to 73, go and see if any of those 10 red flags are what you are struggling with. There might be some additional things that you struggle with that I did not mention in that episode. However, go and identify, go and write down, go and just record it. If you wanted to record it on your phone or do just so it can do a transcription for you, whatever's the easiest, okay? Because I understand you're busy. But go and identify those problem behaviors, the problem people, because remember those behaviors are attached to people who are doing them, and then start observing exactly like if you can't pinpoint exactly what it is, start observing. If you actually take the time, which again I understand can be tricky. As a leader, you're busy, you don't necessarily have the time, but I would carve out the time. I would put 1 week aside if I were you, and I would just put my ear to the ground and listen and observe about what's going on in the workplace. Put yourself strategically in, say, lunchtime conversations or in the kitchen where you can overhear if people are talking to each other or what's going on. And you are strategically doing this so that you can kind of figure out who are those problem people, what are they doing, and what's going on. Then the next step, number 2, is to start having conversations or discussions with relevant people about your awareness of the culture and then get them on board. So these other relevant people could be other managers, it could be leaders, it could be heads of departments, it could be your CEO. So go and listen or go and have those relevant discussions after you've done all the observing, after you've done all the listening, because it's incredibly important that you do not do this alone. You have to have some other people who have your back, who understands and actually recognize those problems as well. So you can just go to them and you can say, like, I thought that there might be a problem with our workplace culture. So I spent the last week really, really delving deeper and listening and observing. And these were my findings. Have you seen these behaviors? What do you think about it? I think we need to reset the expectations in this workplace. And yeah, so then you guys can have a brainstorming session where you set the expectations. So you're going to go strip everything back and you're going to say, okay, currently, we have no expectations when it comes to workplace culture. It's all those unwritten rules. We have no expectations when it comes to these behaviors or X, Y, and Z, and what that might be. I know that's very subjective, but it depends on what it is for you and those behaviors that it would be. This podcast episode would be super long if I had to give examples of each of those behaviors and how you can reset them. Maybe I can do a separate episode about that. But go and reset those expectations. Go and decide what are those expectations going to be. Do we need to make it legal? Because when it comes to policies and procedures or SOPs, standard operating procedures, that's attached to legal. Or can it be a guideline? So guideline is not legal, and you can't be sued over a guideline. You can be sued over by not following a policy or procedure, for example, but you can't be sued over a guideline. So does this need to be in a guideline? Does this need to be, and that could be whatever type of documentation you have in your workplace. Then what I would like for you to do, because remember now you've spoken about this, you've brainstormed with your leadership team, you've reset the expectations, created the necessary documentation, and that could even just be a staff handbook. So then I'd like for you to communicate that to the whole team about the identified issues. So you're going to identify the issues, the behaviors, and the red flags that you guys have come up with and that you're recognizing. For example, the lack of respect. You can say to your team that we have noticed that there's a lack of respecting the team amongst you guys, and that can create a toxic workplace culture, and we fear that it already has. And so we want to reset the expectations to say that everybody has to be respectful to everybody else at work. Now, what will that look like? And you might seem like if you're teaching a kindergarten class because you are literally telling them what would respect look like. But hey, people need that. They need explicit instruction, because what is the one thing that people always say? They say, yes, but I didn't read about that there. Or what's an example I can use? People will always say, but no, it didn't explicitly say that you have to do that. So my interpretation is this. So we have to be very mindful that if things are not explicitly written down or given to people, then it's up for interpretation. And remember, your version of something, how you interpret something and how I interpret something might be different because of our different backgrounds, because of our different education and everything that happened to us in the past. So make sure that nothing is left for interpretation. It needs to be quite explicit. And then, communicate those explicit or expectations, not only verbally, but also in writing. And then the fifth thing that you're going to do is you're going to hold your team members accountable, because if they're not held accountable, they know that, this is just something new that the boss has implemented, but we don't need to follow through because she's not going to keep us accountable. And again, you might think that people are not really like that, but believe me, if you do not hold your team accountable, then this whole process is going to fall flat on its head. And what I'd like for you and the leadership team then to do, number 6, is to role model positive workplace culture and behavior. So make sure that if you want to see your team respecting each other, that you show the same amount of respect to your team, and quite purposefully. So again, strategically, you're going to set up certain meetings, you're going to walk in and greet everybody in the room instead of just ignoring them, because as part of respect in certain cultures, and again, this is why it is up for interpretation if you don't write it down, is because respect in different cultures look differently. If you walk into a room and you don't greet everybody, it can be perceived quite rudely to someone. To you, it might not. So just make sure that, again, respect is understood. If it's respect or if it is something else, just make sure that everybody understands what is meant by that. And then I would like for you and the leadership team to role model that to the team. Okay. And then number 7 is you're going to promote a positive workplace culture. And there are so many ways you can do that. This is literally something you can go and Google. I might actually do a separate episode on this if there's enough interest in that. But I've written a couple of things down. And remember, when it comes to workplace culture, the environment that you have, there are your tangibles and then there are your intangibles. So your intangibles would be things like emotional support, mental health support, work-life balance, and then or fun days, respect for each other. Then there are your tangible things like incentives, promotions, training. So there are actually so many of them. So I've not necessarily broken them down, and I'm just going to mention all of them again, but they are tangible and intangible. You have to have a balance of all of them. Okay, so I've written down incentives, team building exercises, work-life balance, training, meaning professional development, promotions, mentorship, support, mental health support, emotional support, fun days, and respect. So those are a couple of things that I've written down. But again, you guys are going to go and have to decide what that looks like for your workplace, because something like fun days or incentives or something like that might not be possible for you, whereas professional development, there might be a lot of money in the budget for that. So then that's going to be a focus. But make sure that you actually balance it out, that it's not just not the intangibles and not the tangibles. It needs to be a balance of both. Okay. And then the final thing I'd like for you to do is to do regular check-ins to ensure that your culture remains positive. Now, the only way that you are going to make sure that all the steps that you've implemented for your workplace culture to remain positive is to have regular check-ins with individuals in your team. That is a safe space for them to open up to say that, okay, behind closed doors, when you are not around, Rika, the positive workplace culture falls flat on its head and everybody's so negative. They don't like you. They don't like anything that you've implemented, X, Y, and Z. So, or they might say, yes, behind closed doors, everybody has a lot of respect for each other. So it works. So it's important that you also do those one-on-one meetings with people that you trust in the team. I mean, you could even have those problem people in to talk to them, because remember, some of these problematic people who have these problematic behavior is we need to work with them. We need to work with them as individuals. And I've got a lot of episodes on this podcast where I've spoken to you about dealing with difficult people, performance management, one-on-one meetings. So go and have a look at the podcast. There are 74 episodes, and this is now episode 75 that you can work through to go and have a look. So I am thinking about putting a podcast catalog together so that you can actually just go and search topics and then it might come up for you. I might do that as a special bonus for the 100th episode coming up in about 30 episodes, or if you guys would like that sooner, like a catalog of all the episodes. The podcast is turning 1 next week, so I can do it as a birthday gift to all of you. If you want me to put together a catalog, I can do that, and the catalog would be searchable. So you can just go and search this word, and then I will make sure that all the keywords, for example, on all the episodes are on there as well, and then you can search them. Okay, let me know if you would like that. You can go to womenoffaithinleadership.com, and there is a little box where you can give me some feedback, or you can you've got a question. You can just even submit it in the listener question box and say, yes, please, we'd love the catalog. So if there's enough interest in that, I'll make the effort and I'll do that. So I'm thinking about next week's episode, which is where the podcast turned 1. So I'm very excited about that. So so those are the 8 things you can do to improve or to fix your workplace culture. But like I mentioned, it's not an overnight thing. You're going to have to be patient when you implement these 8 things. Okay, so I'll quickly recap because I didn't mention all the numbers. So number 1 was to recognize the problem people, and then to start observing those behaviors. Number 2 was to start having discussions with the relevant people, okay, about what you have seen. 3 is to set the expectations. 4 was to communicate that to the whole team. 5 was to hold your team members accountable. 6 was to role model positive workplace culture. 7 was to promote a positive workplace culture. And then 8 was those regular check-ins. So on to our listener question. This person asks, communication in toxic teams. How do we do one-on-one meetings with team members that hold on to the past? And this is actually a really relevant question to this podcast episode where I just spoke about toxic workplace culture. And I think what I want to say to you is that, look, those people that are part of the toxic team, that are holding on to the past and really just can't forgive and forget. And this might possibly happen actually as you work through these 8 ways to improve your positive workplace culture. What I would say to you is get out of the workplace with that person. Is if that person's really, really difficult. It depends on your relationship with them. But if that person's being really difficult at work, what I would suggest is take them outside of work. Get them at some mutual ground. Because remember, sometimes if you meet with that person in your office, that's your stomping ground. That's your authority. That's your safe space. That's not their safe space. Okay, you can't necessarily go and sit with them where they sit unless they've got an office and then that's their safe place. So my suggestion would be, I'm sorry, I've already made a couple of suggestions here now, but let's start this. Scenario is this person is, really holding on to the past, not wanting to forgive those people who have done whatever to them. So my first suggestion would be is to go and sit in their safe space and talk to them about it, okay? Where they feel the most safest, where they feel that that's their stomping ground, that's their authority. If they do not have a private office or space where you can sit and do that, then I would suggest going outside of the building, finding a mutual safe place, which could be a coffee shop, because people are most likely not to throw a scene in a coffee shop if they get really upset. A place where I worked had this beautiful bay, beautiful outlooking, the buildings were overlooking the bay. So for us, that was just a calming space. If I needed to have conversations with people away from my office, I would take them to the bay. And it was quite a bit of a walk. So we had to walk a little bit, about maybe a 5 to 10 minute walk to get there, depending on if I had heels on or not. And so then just get them there, sit on the bench. I mean, this bench is just so unprofessional. It's just a wooden bench that overlooks the bay, but who cares? Because it's this mutual place. We didn't even look at each other. We just sat on a bench next to each other and we overlooked the bay and we had a conversation. Okay, so there, just in that moment, you're already taking away quite a lot of the normal things that go on in a one-on-one meeting, which is your face-to-face contact, because face-to-face contact can be quite intimidating as well, especially if you're in your stomping ground and they feel that, that they have no place here. So I was sitting next to this person. We were not having any face-to-face or eye contact, which automatically really gave that person feeling as if, okay, I don't even have to look Rika in the eye when I'm saying all these difficult things, because sometimes, remember, if you are saying something that's really tricky to your partner or to your child or to somebody, sometimes it's really hard to look them in the eye when you say those things, okay? So then talk to them and say, hey, I've noticed that you are holding on to the past, regarding this incident that happened between you and, say, Sue, okay? Why don't you run me through what's really bothering you here? Just open up to them and ask them what's going on. I can see, my opinion is that you're holding on to the past and I want to really help you to get past this. What do you think I can do to support you to get past this incident or to get past this behavior or this gossip that was done to you? They might say something ridiculous like, I really just want Sue gone. I want her fired. Okay, well, that's not going to happen. Then you can give an alternative. So depending on their answer, then if what they say is not possible, you're going to give the best possible alternative. Then you're going to say, well, unfortunately, I can't do that. However, I can have a conversation with Sue and I can make sure that she's held accountable for her actions. And so in saying that, you're not saying that you are going to give them a written warning. You're not saying that you are going to performance management them. All that you are doing is you're giving this person reassurance that Sue will be held accountable for her actions. And so an example that I quickly want to give of something that happened to me in the past, and I try not to, I like to tell my stories, but I try to keep it short and sweet so that you guys just have quick things. But I think this example is really, really important. So many years ago, a colleague of mine actually screamed at me in front of other people. And she really she made me feel like the worst person in the world through what she had said. And there was a mediation meeting. And in the mediation, so this was now after, in the mediation meeting, I did not even get a chance to say what I wanted to say because she again did the same thing. In front of my boss, she screamed at me and she just had a go at me and then stood up and walked out. And so I was so upset. I was so upset. I cried so loudly that everybody could hear me crying because I was so upset about that incident. I never had an opportunity to state my case to that colleague, but all that I wanted to know was that colleague was going to be held accountable for her actions towards me. And so I was reassured by someone, a line manager, that she was going to be held accountable for her actions. So that was that. There was no other mediation meeting because I didn't want to sit in another mediation meeting. There was no follow-up after that. It basically I just had to let her go, although it hurt me very badly and it was just so disrespectful. It was embarrassing because it was in front of my other colleagues. But because I received the reassurance that person was being dealt with according to the processes and procedures of the place where I was working at, it put me at ease. Of course, my heart was sore. Of course, I didn't want to go to work the next day. But I knew because she was being held accountable and I had to take my line manager's word for it. There was nothing else I could do about it. I just had that reassurance and I felt okay about that. Was it tough? Yes, it was. Did I want to hold on to the past? Yes, I did. But luckily, I didn't. I mean, to be honest, a couple of years later, I bumped into that colleague and it was hard. It truly was hard. That colleague was actually very friendly to me many years later. And it surprised me because then I realized, oh, wow, I really have held on to the past because she's being friendly to me and I just want to be grumpy at her. And so, yes, give that person reassurance that whatever that other persons do, they will be held accountable or they've already been held accountable for it. So then you have to ask them to trust the process. Just trust the process. Tell that person you also are unable to give them progress updates because sometimes they request progress updates. You can't do that. That's confidential on the other person's side. But you just need to keep on giving that person reassurance that you are holding that person accountable for their actions. And you don't have to, if they ask what will that be, then you say, I can't disclose that information. That's confidential. But I would like for you to trust me, trust the relationship I have with you, that this person is being dealt with. And then what I would suggest is give that person something to work on. Give that person something else that they can fixate on, a project. Make them feel important somehow, show them that they're still valued in the company and show them that you value their expertise and their experience as well. So it can be really tough because if somebody holds on to the past, it means that they're also not giving their best because they feel like the company does not have their back. So you need to give that person reassurance and then give them something else to focus on. I mean, that could be something as simple as help me to update the policies and procedures. Help me to update this documentation. It's not a punishment. It's because I trust you. You've been working here the longest of everybody. So I need you to help me. And again, these are strategies that we use with children. I mean, I'm a teacher. My background is in teaching. Obviously, I've moved out of teaching and I've done a lot of other things. But a lot of these strategies are what we use, and it's not even because it's a child or an adult, it's because it's human behavior. We manage human behavior in a similar way, whether a person is a child or an adult, it does not matter. It's about human behavior. We just need to manage the human behavior, and every single person in this whole world, does not matter what age they are, they want to be validated, they want to be respected, they want to know that their voice and their experience matters. Okay, so I really sincerely hope that is going to answer the question that you have. And if you have a listener question, as a follow-up as well, It can be a new question. It can be a follow-up question to an episode that I did. Then please come and go to womenoffaithinleadership.com. And the page takes a little bit of a while to load. I've seen that. So my apologies. I do need to try and get that fixed. You can go to workplaceculturehub.com/Women of Faith in Leadership. That will take you to the exact same page. I think that's because there's a redirect on that womenoffaithinleadership.com that it's taking a very long time. But what I'll do is I'll make sure that I link it in the show notes below so you can just click on it, okay? Then go and submit your listener question. And then as a follow-up, I will either put it at the end of an episode like I've done with this one, or I'll do a whole episode about it if I feel that I need to do a whole episode about it. Okay, and please come and join the Facebook group. Go to womenoffaithinleadership.com, which you can click a link to go to the Facebook group, or go to Facebook and search Women of Faith in Leadership Community, and then that'll take you there. And let me know if you've got any questions or if you've got any feedback. I love feedback. And if you've not given a review on Apple Podcast, I would really, really, really appreciate it. I'm top 3% globally at the moment with the podcast. And a couple more reviews will push me to that top 2%. So that'll be excellent if we can get there for the birthday next week. And so come and celebrate the podcast's 1 year of birthday with me next week. Next week, I'll do an episode on what was everybody's favorite episodes over the last year, what were the topics that we covered. It's just going to be a bit of an overview, and there might even be a little surprise in there. So come back next week and listen up. I'm thinking about some sort of a surprise for the listeners on the show. And thank you so very much. If you've not subscribed to the podcast yet, click the subscribe button, please. That would really help me. It will just show the algorithm that this podcast is popular, and that'll mean that it can reach other people and other women of faith in leadership as well. Okay, I look forward to connecting with you, and I super duper look forward to celebrating the podcast's 1 year birthday with you next week. Bye. Thanks so much for listening. If this podcast blessed you in some way, the number one way you can thank me is by leaving a review. Your feedback means the world to me and lights me up every single time when I read it, and it makes me want to keep going. So please leave a review, and your review will also help other Christian women in leadership find the answers they are looking for. So whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, scroll down to the review section and leave that review. Then head over to womenoffaithinleadership.com and join our free Facebook community, and I look forward to engaging with you there.